Simply Tammy.
It's a blessing that I'm here, I'm alive. No, I never ever have to cry, cause it's something I know will always work for me on my side. Not a thing I even have to fight, all things work together for my good. Life speaks if you listen, it might be sound. Watch the love come alive. Sharing the truth that inspires, sharing the truth that inspires, sharing the truth that inspires. All things work together for my good. Life speaks if you listen, it might be sound. Watch the joy come alive, watch the joy. Sharing the truth that inspires.
Inspired to love, inspired to grow, inspired to heal, inspired to live. Simply Tammy.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. It is Simply Tammy, and you have joined us again for another amazing episode of Women Who Win, where I invite amazing women who are willing to be transparent and share their challenges and triumphs in order to encourage and inspire others. So I cannot wait to bring the amazing woman that has joined me tonight before your front. Before I do that, as always, I want to thank you for joining. For those of you that tune in regularly, thank you. For those that may be watching for the first time, thank you for tuning in. If you would, please do what you see scrolling at the bottom of the screen. If you happen to be watching from Facebook, go ahead and share the video. We want as many people as can to join us tonight. And also, if you are watching on Facebook and or YouTube, you can jump in the comments and say hello to us. And I also like to know where you're watching from if you jump in the comments. So say hello, let us know where you're watching from, because the platform that we're in, until you jump in the comments, we don't know who you are. And we love to interact with you and acknowledge your comments during these interviews. Also, while you're there on Facebook, go ahead and like or follow the Simply Tammy page. If you're watching on YouTube, or even if you're not on YouTube, make sure you go and subscribe to the Simply Tammy channel. There's content on that page that is, it's not exclusive to these interviews. There's additional content other than these interviews. So I want to connect with you in both of those spaces. So please do so. Subscribe to Simply Tammy on YouTube and like or follow on Facebook. And last of my announcements in the beginning, many of you know, I've had a theme this month. Mother's, May, we've been celebrating Mother's Day. At the beginning of this month, I also had an amazing announcement and celebration. It made 1 year that we have been doing these Women Who Win interviews. My very first interview for the month on May 6th was interview number 30. So tonight, my guest makes interview number 32. And also at the beginning of this month, I received the news that my name, Simply Tammy, had been registered as a trademark. So exciting news, exciting things happening. And I have some other announcements that I'm going to wait to share to the end. I hope you guys are going ahead and jumping in the comments and saying hello, because I will acknowledge those that did when I bring my guest on the screen. So I don't want to delay any further. I'm so very excited to talk to this amazing woman tonight. And my guest tonight is Lady Charlet Lewis. So I'm going to read her bio, and after I finish reading her bio, I'm going to bring her on the screen. And you guys can still jump in the comments as I'm reading, because again, I will acknowledge your comments and say hello to you once I bring her on the screen. So her bio reads, Charlet Lewis, or Lady Charlet, is the wife of Tony Lewis, senior pastor of Light of Life Church, a ministry focused on the least, the lost, and the left out. She is a licensed and ordained minister of the gospel, a speaker and a teacher, a certified grief recovery specialist, coach, and a published author. Her own journey through grief after the loss of her father, brother, mother, and multiple miscarriages has allowed her the compassion to guide anyone struggling with loss towards their own healing and recovery. She is known for her transparency, love, wisdom, and humor which she pours unreservedly into anyone she meets. Her passion is to help women discover their God-given potential and purpose by conquering their past in order to embrace their future. She does not take herself too serious as she uses humorous stories and concepts from her own life to inspire, encourage, advocate, and teach. Her writings and teachings inspire and challenge women to develop a strong relationship with God and to strive toward emotional and spiritual health. As she believes her first ministry is home, she takes her responsibilities as a wife of 20 years, mom of four, ranges from the ages of 10 to 27, very serious, yet always with a sprinkle of humor and fun. So without any further ado, good evening, good evening, good evening.
Good evening, Miss Simply Tammy. Good evening and congratulations.
Thank you,
Wow,
thank
trademark.
you.
That's awesome. Congratulations, as well as I'm the 32nd person.
Yes, you're 32.
Amen. All right. That's amazing. Congratulations to you.
Yes, and I'm so very honored to have you. Before I acknowledge, we have some people that have already said hello to us in the comments, and I'm going to acknowledge them in a moment. But I always like to kind of give a little backstory, if there is one, on how I met my guests. And Lady Charlet and I worked on a project together in 2019. She does some graphic design from time to time, and I have a business doing interior design. So we were partnered on a book project. For Dr. K. And we, of course, corresponded during then. And then that same year, later in that year, I was able to meet you in person at the I'm God's Girl for Real conference, where you were one of the featured guests. So it was an amazing experience as always. But having learned more about you through getting your product at that event and just following you on social media, I could not wait. I've been very excited and looking forward to chatting with you tonight. So we are going to acknowledge some of the people that have said hello to us before we jump in. We have Crystal Batts. Hello, Crystal. Thank you for watching. Libby Fritz is watching. Hello, Libby. Miko King is watching. Hey, Miko. Heavenly Home. Hello, hello.
Yes, that's my cousin.
Yeah, okay. They said that later in the comments. Okay, yes. She's a good lady. So we have people from Florida, South Carolina. So thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you being here. So, Lady Charlet, you absolutely have such an amazing story. As I was, as I said, I purchased your book, which we will talk about. Well, mention the book or show the book a little later. But I was like, oh Lord, I don't know how we're gonna get all this in.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. But I do want to start with you were not natively born here in America, and you moved here at the age of 11, if I'm correct, and had to learn the language and everything. So I want to start there because I vividly remember being 11, being in middle school, being very acclimated to my environment and my surroundings. To move from one country to another and having to adjust. Let's start there with how it's like you've been adapting all of your life.
Pretty much. It pretty much started out, living in Germany, living, growing up in, let's be honest, it's Germany, growing up in a white family. I'm Black, I'm different from everyone else. As I was growing up, I really didn't notice it, so to speak. The only thing that I noticed, which, for the rest of my life, it was kind of like, my sister had beautiful, long hair. We have different dads. So she had a white dad, I had a Black dad. So she had beautiful, long hair. And then there was me, right? No one knew how to do hair. There was just me in a little bush. That's where I realized that I was different than everyone else. And then when I was around 11, my dad decided, we're moving to America. And the only thing that I could say about America was what we saw on TV. And we only saw really two things on TV. We saw things like Dallas and Dynasty, where everybody was uber rich. Or we saw New York City and, cityscapes and crime and So I knew we weren't rich. So in my mind, I thought, oh my God, we're going to the ghetto. Let's be real. I was terrified. I was like, there's no way.
Wow.
I was pleasantly surprised that we were in a pretty nice neighborhood. We moved to Washington, D.C., and it was culture shock. I did not know how to speak English. German was my first language. I
Wow.
understood a little bit of it. My father, who was American, he learned German, so we always spoke German in the home. So I went straight to a DC public school. I skipped the seventh, no, the sixth grade. So I went from fifth grade straight to seventh, straight to middle school. So just imagine elementary school to middle school.
Wow.
It was culture shock. And because the kids weren't so nice and made fun of me and my accent, I lost my accent within a year. That's why I do not sound German. So
Yeah,
yeah, it was culture shock.
wow. I remember you reading you said that you were too black for Germany, but you were not black enough
For here.
for America.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, wow. So having to already learn to suppress yourself at a very young age, how did that continue on as you begin to grow into a young woman?
Probably because I did all that suppressing, because I was never comfortable in who I was, what I looked like, what I was supposed to look like. Um, I learned to play a role. I became whatever somebody else wanted me to be.
Mhm.
So if I wanted to be in that circle, I started acting like people in that circle. Um, that's kind of how I coped. And you know, then I realized I'm in my mid 20s and I don't know who I am. I
Mhm.
had no idea because I always conformed to other people, because my whole life growing up, I always felt like there was something missing. There was something missing. Like what is that link that I
Mhm.
need? And I didn't realize that thing that I needed was Jesus. That was a
Right,
little bit later, but
right.
I was always looking for something.
Mhm.
And yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend being living for other people, so to speak.
Absolutely, absolutely. So at some point you of course, you're struggling with your identity, realizing, okay, I'm a young woman. I really don't know who I am because this is how I've lived all of my life. And then you at some point, and I may be misquoting, did you become a single mother before you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So now as you're still learning who Charlotte is, you now are responsible for raising a child.
Absolutely. And not even raising a child in that is it's also my life at home was hard. I had a father that was a functioning alcoholic, functioning drug user. Because of that, I had a mom that, she was loving, she loved us, uh, but she was depressed a lot because of the issues that my father had.
Mhm.
So, again, it was very hard to grow up in that environment. And again, who am I?
Right.
Then I get to college, and, like most of us well, I won't say most of us, but some of us go to college and lose our minds, right? Um, and because of the issues that my family had, and because of my father was there, he was in the home, but he really wasn't there, if
Mm,
that makes sense.
it
So
does.
I didn't have that father figure to teach me certain things. So I was always looking for the love of I was looking for a father's love. And
Mhm.
so I was that young girl that went looking for love in all the wrong places. And that's how I got to college and became pregnant,
Mhm.
because I just wanted somebody to love me. And to be honest, when I found out I was pregnant, it wasn't like, oh my God. It was like, wow, now I have somebody that can love me. That
Wow.
was my idea. It was like, now maybe having this baby, I can get out of the house,
Mhm.
I'm grown, and I have this little person that looks up to me and he or she at the time is going to love me, and I have someone to love that's not going to leave me.
Mm.
You
Wow.
know,
Yeah.
when I even when I just said that, it speaks to my immaturity at the time, but the fact that all I really wanted was someone to love me because I
Right.
felt like no one did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, eh, so as you are, a single mother, now you have the responsibility, and at some point after that, you meet your husband, and I'm trying not to tell the whole story because I want people to buy the book. Um, but oftentimes people, when you enter into a union with someone else and you don't know who you are, that's going to cause further issues. How was marriage? How was it going into marriage with you still learning and not fully sure of who you were?
Well, I believe that, all you need is love. Right. Right. I figured as soon as I get married, everything's gonna be perfect. He loves me, I love him. Two people coming together as one. We are one now. But what I realized quickly is our one, we both had issues, and I had a
Mhm.
lot of them because, again,
Mhm.
going into a space with someone else and um, coming from a background that I did not have a good example of what marriage was supposed to look like.
Right.
Um, my husband grew up, with a mom and dad at home that loved each other, no drama, everything was good. They went to church, things like that. I come from completely opposite. And so the way that I would react to things, the way that I would be in the marriage was very hard. So we laugh about it now, but the first few years, um, he didn't want to come home, and I didn't want him to come home. I mean, literally within the first year or so, we realized we thought about we I think we made a mistake. This isn't going to work.
Mm.
We talked divorce. But then we rededicated our lives, and we're just like, absolutely not. And as a matter of fact, we always tell the story. It happened on 9/11. On
Yeah.
9/11 is when we was like, we were going to get divorced. We talked divorce, and then 9/11 happened that day. And as we sat there and watched it for the rest of the day, we realized, what are we doing? Like, there
Mm.
are people dying. This is crazy.
Yeah.
So, we went to therapy, couples therapy, our pastor. I mean, we did everything we could. And 20 years later,
Yeah.
first 5 years were rough. And, I'm truly, I truly believe that God gave me this man because I don't think anyone else could have dealt with the issues that I had for so many years. Heck, I still have some days. That was okay with helping me through the depression, helping me through my father issues, my mama issues. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying he was perfect. He had stuff too. You know what I mean? Like, he had
Mhm.
issues too that he worked on. And I'm grateful to have a man that says, "Hey, I need to go to therapy too." So we
Right.
are Jesus plus therapy for real.
Yes. Yes. You sport the T-shirt often, and I see
I
you
do
post about it.
often,
Yes,
yes.
yes, we need Jesus and therapy. So one of the other things that um, I found very encouraging about your story, you mentioned other women that came along to help you on your journey. Um, I remember the story about the woman that came to your home. I think your husband made you talk to her on the phone, and you were like, no, but she showed up and became, I think you said, like a sister, like it was whatever you needed. God sent her to be that to you. And then there was a time in your career that some he sent another woman to help guide you along the way, which we know that's important. But how did you embrace that? And then now how do you in turn teach that?
Wow, that's a good question. Up until probably about 10 or 15 years ago, I was that woman that used to say, "Well, I don't do women," right? Because
Mhm.
all they do, anyway, we know the story, right? Because we hear it all the time. But I simply prayed a prayer one day after um, my husband and I, I was one of those days where I'm like, I don't have any friends, I don't have anybody, it's just me and you. And he was like, no, you need to put yourself out there. The reason you don't have any friends is because you don't put yourself out there. And it was almost like a challenge to me. So I prayed and I was like, God, I'm going to open up myself to someone else and I'm going to trust you to bring the people that I need. Now,
Huh.
was it that easy? No, because I was terrified. Um, but once I opened myself up to the possibility that somebody could be there that wouldn't hurt me,
Mhm.
it absolutely happened. And since then, God has brought different women into different stages of my life. Some women that are no longer there, and some women that are still there, after
Mhm.
all this time. And what I had to learn was to change my language about women. And that's how I teach that now. When I hear a woman say, well, First Lady, I just don't do women. I'm like, we're gonna stop right there.
Mhm.
Get that out of your mouth, get that out of your mind. We
Yes,
need women. We need you need to say, I need healthy women in my life. Right?
absolutely,
That's what
absolutely.
we need to be. And God created us for relationship,
Mhm.
right? And I believe that there are people, even people that you may think, it's usually those that you don't think are supposed to be in your life. Like my mentor, she started out as my mentor, Regina McCrae, and now she's been my mother, my best friend, she's everything. But when I first met her, I want no parts of her because she was, 15, 20 years older than I was. And I'm like, she's not going to get me. She's going to think I'm crazy. I thought she was too religious for me. She's going to be
Mhm.
like, oh my God. Because at that point when I met her, I still cussed a little, so things like that. I'm like, what if that slips out, right? She's going to disown me. What if she knew everything about me? But
Mhm.
the more I told her about who the real Charlotte was, she helped me unpack that and say, you know what? That's okay. The
Absolutely.
did those things or said those things or think like that is because of your past.
Mhm.
So now I'm going, well, you need to open up yourself. So I encourage everyone to pray and ask God to bring the woman into your life. Stop
Mm.
looking, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what we do. I want her to be my best friend. Well, she may not be right for you.
Mhm.
So yeah,
That's
I
good.
would encourage everybody to pray and ask God and then open up yourself. And when somebody comes along that you're like, I'm just not sure if we're gonna connect. Hey, that's how I got she's right here. uh, um, Dr. K, right? I wasn't going to be
Yeah.
her friend because I was so intimidated by her because she's Dr. K. And so for years when I would see her, I wouldn't, I'm like, I'm not really going to talk to her because I dropped out of college. So that's my issue. But I thought she doesn't want to talk to a college dropout. She's a doctor. And then when we finally had a conversation, and I'm like, oh, she's just as silly as I am. Praise the Lord. Oh, I love you, Dr. K. And I realized,
Yes.
doctor
Yes.
or not, it's
Yes. And I think that's the beautiful thing about us connecting and being able to put ourselves in spaces where we are okay with exposing ourselves to one another with, whatever liberties we have, because that is when we see what we really have in common,
okay.
outside of the titles, outside of the things that we see on social media and those things. So she says she loves you too. Um, yeah, she was my guest last week with such an amazing time talking to her. So
She
I'm
is
sure the two
awesome.
of you have an amazing time together. I'll never forget the joke she cracked on you at God's Girl for Real 2 years ago, but I'm not going to bring it.
Yeah. Just don't talk about the podium, please.
Yeah.
I still got issues. No one saw me. I just
She said, I told her
just
not
decided
to.
to put that big old podium in there. Didn't they know I was coming?
That was so funny when she posted that. I was like, she was wrong for that. But um, another thing that you mentioned in your story not too long after you were married, and which is now part of who you are and how you help other people, is that you had to deal with grief. And one of the things that I really love about the way that you wrote it, of course, we always associate grief with death. You lost your mother, your father, and had several miscarriages. But you mentioned that there was let me see, how was it? A lost history graph that you had to do, that you had to go back and acknowledge all of your losses. Um, So I want you to talk a little bit about that and then lead us into how did it come to the point? Because I remember you writing when you heard, I don't hear the heartbeat for the fourth time. So, many women don't come forth or don't talk openly about how they have had to deal with several miscarriages. So, outside of death, look, I just asked you a compound question. The
It's
part
okay.
one is, other than death, what other losses were you having to deal with and address? Through grief and then leading up to having several miscarriages.
Of course. So, I believe because of all of the grief, especially the death that I've had in my life, I came across emotional health and spirituality, and then the Grief Recovery Institute. Actually, our pastor at the time, Dr. Ari Vernon, who was our pastor, was talking about it, and everyone should be in grief recovery. And I was like, "What is that?" I
Mhm.
don't. At the time, my mom was still alive, my dad was still here, so I'm like, I don't even understand. But I read the book and I realized that I had issues with loss issues, and the book, um, sorry, that's the wrong one. The Grief Recovery Method, the book itself, talks about that in our life, we have over 40 or so losses, or more. Losses are not just death and dying, divorce, empty nest, abuse, financial loss. Every time we lose something in our life, it creates a grief within us.
Wow.
And as people, really, we are not taught how to deal with loss. Like, think about it. Even when we're smaller, we're taught on how to win, how to gain. But
Mm.
when we lose something, we make quick sayings like, well, a 16-year-old breaks up with her boyfriend. What do we say? Oh, there's more fish in the sea, right? So we're
Right.
already setting them up like, don't worry about it. You'll replace the loss with
Yes.
something else, right?
Suppress those emotions.
Right. Absolutely. Little kids lose a puppy or a dog. What do we do as parents? We replace the loss. So we don't even have time to grieve. We don't have time to do that. We need to get back to, in the Bible, it talks about there's a time to grieve. They
Mm.
took, 7 days or 14 days, whatever it was, and they just grieved. We don't do that. We go right back like, I'm fine. I'm good.
Yeah.
Even when
Yeah.
we lose someone dear to us, we go back to church and they be like, oh, how are you doing? Oh, I'm good. I'm great. I'm fine. Yeah, somebody just said losing a job. All of those are grieves. And we
Mm.
have to acknowledge our emotions in that. And we're not good at doing that. So, um, so for me, having these losses back to back, I realized I had to do the work. I had to go to therapy. I had to feel it. And then I had to do something about it. I had to forgive the people that hurt me, and in order for me to move forward. And that's some of the things that I lost, that I, learned in therapy and lost in grief recovery. And that's why I even became certified as a grief recovery specialist, because I realized I've overcome so much that now I want to help other people overcome their grief and their loss, because we will always say we're fine, especially as
Mhm.
Black women, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
I can handle anything. It's okay. We stuff it down. But then when we stuff it and pretend that it's not there, it comes out sideways. That's why we do things like retail therapy, right? Yeah, I know.
Absolutely.
That's why we
Absolutely.
have a glass of wine to unwind at night that turns into two glasses and three. It's not really unwinding, is I don't want to deal with stuff. So I'm
Right.
just going to sit here and do whatever, and we all have our own little vice that we do. Some of us clean. That's my that's my thing. Everybody knows something's
Oh,
wrong with me in my house when I start cleaning like a crazy woman. Oh my gosh, she got something on her mind. She's dealing with something.
yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if I answered your question, because at the second part,
Yeah.
I was like, I forgot what the next part was. But
No, you did answer the first part very, very
okay,
well. The talking about other losses that we experience, because again, most times people, when they first hear or acknowledge grief, they attach it to a death. They seldom think about, I'm grieving other losses, even
right.
though I have all these people around me that may love me, that may care for me.
Mhm.
You're going through a grieving process because
Right.
of these other losses. So you also talked about, it kind of came to a head, or you knew that you had to deal with your own grief after the loss, after you suffered miscarriage number 4?
Yes. Yeah. That, it was very obviously in itself, it's very difficult. After we had the three, my husband, who always wanted five, and I was like, four, that's it. And after Jordan, our daughter, third daughter was born, third child. I have two boys and two girls. Um, I had a vision, I had a dream. I don't remember exactly how, but God showed me that I would have another girl. And I was like, okay. And immediately after she was born, probably, I don't even know if we waited the whole 6 weeks, but I became pregnant right away. Let's just say that, right?
We'll just say you were
Just let
pregnant
me
again very soon.
transparent. Let me transparent. And I became pregnant right away. And I was like, yes. And then we lost no heartbeat first time around. And they were just like, well, it's a fluke. It happens. You've had three children, you're healthy. A year later, same thing. A year later, same thing. And then what they realized, I had a blood clotting disorder. Um, and so everybody was telling us, don't try it again. Don't do it again. And I knew I had this. I'm like, God said there was another child. I
Wow.
know it. I felt it. And I mean, even, our Christian friends, and I'm telling them, I'm like, I believe God. And they're like,
Mhm.
no, this is too much on your body. This is too much on you, all of this stuff. And I went with God. And so when we lost the last baby, Daniel, I was almost 6 months pregnant. And that was devastating. But when I went to the first ultrasound with him and they said it was a boy, I was like, oh my God, we are going to have 5 children, because I truly believe, like, if this is a boy, God said a girl,
Yeah.
right? And when we lost him, as hard as that was, I still believed God. And my husband and I, we were the only ones who were like, there is another child. And I mean, we even had our pastor at the time who was like, you know, basically stop. And I'm like, I believe God. And a year later, we got our miracle, Grace.
Wow.
She
Wow.
was our miracle baby. Even though it was the hardest pregnancy ever, I had to take, um, blood thinning shots every day. I mean, it was crazy, but it was worth it. And
Mhm.
all I can say is, I still believe God.
Yes, yes, Miko's chiming in with that.
Yes.
That is so, so very powerful. Um, and I wanna talk about that a little bit, because I know in your book you talk about how God deals with you in dreams, and um, I can relate to that because he deals with me oftentimes the same way. But when God has shown you something and you are resolved with that, um, what would you say to someone who's struggling in their faith to get to that point of standing with God when everything else is standing against it or speaking against it?
Wow. Um, what I would say to them is to continue to hope and continue to believe.
Mhm,
I truly believe that if we feel in our soul that we know that we heard his voice,
mhm,
it's the enemy's job to come in and to distort that,
mhm,
right? And
mhm,
so we have to be very vigilant about what we listen to and what we hear. So I always tell people, pay attention to your surroundings. When your faith start wavering, you need to start paying attention to who you're talking to. You need to start paying attention to what you're watching. You need to start paying attention to what you're allowing in your environment, because it's usually other people,
mhm.
even family, even people that love you. They don't mean it, right? They don't even know, because they didn't hear the word. You did. And
Right.
so I always caution people, if keep that tucked in your heart. And then when everything, especially when everything looks crazy, I always feel like that's when God is really working. If God just gave us everything every time he gave us a word and 5 seconds later we had it,
Mhm,
do we really have faith?
mhm,
Right?
mhm.
No. We need to pay attention to what he says. So I would say hold on. For us, that was, almost 6 years.
Wow.
6 years of heartbreak after heartbreak. And I'm not saying that I wasn't heartbroken. I'm not saying that I didn't question God. I did. And I questioned him. And I'm like, but you said, and maybe I was wrong. I did have those moments. But every time I went back to my journal and wrote down, my dream, which is I would tell other people too, when God speaks, write it down, put a date next to it, write it down as fast as you can, and then go back. That was my reminder. And he would give me little things in between to show me some things as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, hold on to it. Don't let it
Yes.
go. Don't let the enemy steal what God has, poured inside of you.
Yes. So I'm going to segue to the book. I know that there's three of them. I have two. I don't have the workbook that yet, but the I had to change, and then the accompanying devotional and journal. So um, we're going to tell you guys towards the end when we share her contact information how to get those. But I commend you and applaud you for how transparent you were with telling your story. Um, I've written books myself, and I know the struggle of having to revisit places emotionally to write about them, and just the thoughts of what are people going to say, what are people going to think. So what was your process for saying yes to this?
Whoa. Um, the process really was God, let me be honest, jacking me up to the point where he told me, you need to write it down. I was the type of person, I was raised, what goes on in this house stays in this house, right? Because I grew up in a household that had a lot of issues, abuse issues, a whole bunch of stuff happening. I always kept things quiet. I learned to mask, right? Put on your mask, pretend everything is fine. So I learned to make it look good on the outside while you're falling apart on the inside, right? I did that even in church for many, many years. And so with that, I realized that I had to, in order for me to come forth, hello,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
order for me to come forth, I realized I had to stop being afraid of who I was, and that it didn't matter what people thought about me anymore. And it only matters what God says, right? And God still loved me despite of the fact of all of the things that I did wrong in my life. So he basically said, I need you to write it down because there are women that are just like you, women that have gone through stuff that you've gone through, who've gone through maybe not as much or even worse than you, who need to understand that I can still use them, even though they may have done some of the things that we did. And, I was very of course, I talked to my husband and I'm like, look, I'm putting this in the book. I know I'm a first lady. And, one of the hardest things that I wrote was that when I was single before I got married, that I dated a married man. I know that's like, oh my God, especially in Christian circles, like you would probably be like, come on, wear the scarlet letter or something. But at the time I was immature. At the time, I didn't know any better. At the time, I mean, yeah, I knew it was wrong, but
Right.
I'm
But you
like,
didn't have the
I'm not hurting
conviction.
anyone.
And
I'm not married, right?
right.
In my immaturity, that's what I thought. Now,
Hmm.
as a married woman, I'm like, whoa, hold up, right?
Right, right.
But as a first lady, I've encountered women and men who have been there. And
Hmm.
I can see it not like, oh my God, you did what? I can see how something like that can happen, but God can take it back, right?
Yeah.
So that, for me, once I wrote it down, I was free. And
Hmm.
one thing that my husband always says that sticks with me is if only you and the devil know, it's bondage.
That's the truth.
I was tired of being in bondage, being one person in front of you at church. Hallelujah, praise the Lord, God is good. Getting in my car and crying all the way home because I felt not worthy. I felt that I wasn't good enough. What if they only knew what my life was like before Christ? And now
Mhm.
I'm like, everybody's life before Christ is pretty jacked up, is it not?
Right. Absolutely.
You're not gonna take me back there. And even today, people bring it up. Okay, and that's
Hmm.
not who I am anymore.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I had marked this page because when I tell you, I hollered and laughed to tears when I read this, and I was like, may not understand this without reading the book, but you've kind of segued us into this. But You said, and this shouldn't have been funny to me, but it was. You said, and this is the chapter I had to find me.
Okay.
And you start off with me, a teacher, a preacher of the gospel, a wife, and a first lady. Never. Had you asked me 20 years ago if I would be a pastor's wife, my answer would have been unequivocally no. His mistress, maybe, but certainly not a wife. You said, I would never be proud of my thought process then, but it speaks to the hurting young woman I once was, who thought so little of herself that I would think I was only good enough to be a mistress and not a wife. So the fact that were transparent enough to even say, me, a pastor's wife, yeah, I'll be his mistress. But I love the way that you tied all of that together because you are very, very transparent about your journey. So I completely understood where that statement come from by the time that I got to it in the book. But, I was eager to get to the point where you accepted, yes, I'm about to be a first lady, knowing how colorful your past had been. So what was that mental process and even the emotional process of stepping into such a role of leadership with your husband?
At that point, I always knew for years before my husband stepped into that role that he's going to be a pastor one day. It was just all over him. Several years before we started the church. And so I had an inkling, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? So in my mind, I was just going to be that first lady that was just going to be like, sitting in the front row going Hercules, Hercules. I'm not going to do anything else, right? That was just going to be me. I'll just be his wife and that's it. But during that time, God was nudging me and he was showing me things and he was changing me. And I was in therapy dealing with women issues because I realized to be a first lady, oh my God, women are going to look to me and I cannot be unhealthy. I have to be healthy for them, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and it's a lifelong thing. I'm still getting healthy. I'm still not 100% there. I still have issues. I still have things. I still have triggers like we all do. But for me, it was kind of I sat back and I was like, wow, God, if you are willing to use me, this vessel, then I'm gonna say yes and amen. And whatever it looks like, that's just what it's gonna look like. Was it easy for me to step in the role? No, absolutely not. I thought because I thought it was a role,
That's
right?
good.
And then I realized I'm just gonna be me. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can't be anybody else. I'm just gonna
Right.
be me. And the ladies at our congregation, they know I can I could roll with the best of them. I could be, like whatever.
Right.
It is what
Right.
it is. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna hold you accountable. We can laugh and we can do everything, but if you're gonna say something that's crazy, I'm going to let you know. No, that's that's the enemy.
Right.
Right?
Right.
We're gonna pick spirit over the flesh every day as
Mm-hmm.
much as we can. So it's an honor that God would choose me.
Mm-hmm.
Is it scary? Absolutely. Is it hard?
Absolutely.
Yes. But I wouldn't do anything else. At this point in my life, I'm like, this is what God has called me to do, and I'm going to step into it as much as I can,
Yes.
all I can.
So looking back over, all the things that you have experienced, what would you say has been the most rewarding because it was the biggest turning point for you?
You know what? The thing that has been the most rewarding and turning points for me is, and this is something that I'm actually learning now and have learned over the last few years, is letting people go.
Mm.
Meaning, in what we do, people come in and out of our lives.
Mhm.
And that is hard for someone who has issues like me, for people leaving, right? With grief and all of that type of stuff. So we always have abandonment issues.
Absolutely.
And what God has been teaching me over these years is people don't belong to me, right? So they come in, we help them, I help them, they help us, right? A lot of times as well. But then God moves them. because they have something inside of them for them to do something else somewhere else. And so for me, that is the biggest lesson, to understand that we are all being used in whatever capacity, and we have to be okay with that. Because again, we like comfort, we like our friends, and then when somebody leaves, we're like, no, right? And we fight for them to be there. And God is like, nope, nope,
Yeah.
they need to go that way. You need to go this way. Um,
Yeah.
so right now, that's something that I'm learning right now from God, is like, trust me, I'm going to give you the people that you need,
Mhm.
um, for this walk in this part of your life right now. And that's what I really love, is telling people, that it's okay.
Mhm.
Do what God has called you to do, not what somebody else wants you to do, not what I want you to do. Yeah, we want you here. I want you in my life. However, you need to go here. You want to move, and you got to have this great job opportunity. Go, right?
Yeah.
Because in our
Yeah.
selfishness, we're like, girl, that's not going to work out. You need to stay here, right?
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
is loving people enough to let them go,
Yes. Yes.
loving them enough to let them move on and move beyond you even.
Right.
I'm at that
Right.
point now where I want to see all of our leaders and all of my women, like, do what I do, help other people. I want you to be better than me.
Mhm.
I feel like that's what any mother would want, right?
Ye Yes. So talking about mothering and knowing that the challenges that you had as a child with your parents, and now you have the great delight and joy to be the mother of four, ranging from ages 10 to 27.
You say
Um,
delight and joy. No, I'm just kidding. I love them.
yeah, I know I've seen you post things like I think you were while you were in school doing homework and they just kind of bust in and change your whole course. So, what lessons are you purposely instilling in them because of your experiences as a child? So, what did your upbringing make you more intentional about as a parent?
Being there with them,
Mm,
um, caring about what they care about, being intentional about their feelings, and what their likes and their dislikes, and just the day to day. It's not so much about did they eat, do they have enough clothes, do they, I'm just parenting, but it's getting to know them, who they are. That's something that I didn't get. My parents weren't like, what do you think? Like, it didn't matter what we thought, right? My opinion wasn't even asked about anything. That doesn't mean that my children, tell us what to do, but I want to get to know them as people. Each one of my children, they're individuals. They're not the same, right? They all have different interests and things. And sometimes I'm so not interested. Like right now, Roblox and anime, I couldn't care less, but I pay attention. You
mhm.
know,
Mhm.
I know I'm getting to know some of the characters, so now they feel like, wow, she's really engaged, and I want my children to feel that, for me, and that I love them. I knew my parents loved me, but it wasn't like I love you.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't until I became an adult that my mother said I love you to me on a
Mhm.
daily basis. Growing up, I didn't hear that.
Wow.
So
That's
now I need them to know, especially the girl. You are, well, no, not even especially girls, but all of them.
mhm.
All four of them. I love you, and
Right.
even when they get in trouble, I end it with "I love you," even though they don't want to hear it. I love you. So
Um, Mika, you just want me to reword the question for you because not her answer. The question was, what is she intentional about in her parenting based off of the experiences from her childhood? Um, if you need to hear her response again, we'll catch that in the replay because I don't know if she could repeat everything that she said. But I absolutely love again the way that you've been transparent with your journey. So shifting to a little bit lighter subject, one of the things I think I told you that I admire about you from seeing on social media, that you be around here building stuff.
yeah,
I'm like, what in the world? Why she don't live in South Carolina? Because she building tables and shelves and remodeling stuff.
My
So
husband
where did
calls
that
me.
come from?
Yeah, my husband calls me the Black Joanna Gaines because I love farmhouse look. Number one,
Yes, yes.
but
You
um,
have some shiplap in your house?
yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, I do. Yes, shiplap, wallpaper, a lot of white stuff. Yeah, gray. I painted my whole house gray because of it. Yeah, but especially, well, it happened before the pandemic, but I am. I'm gonna say frugal. I used to say cheap. My husband said, "Stop saying you're cheap. You're frugal." And it all started with I wanted a new bedroom set. I wanted a new headboard. We had a headboard for like 17 years. I'm like, I can't see it anymore. And then I saw
Mhm.
the prices. I wanted, one of those farmhouse headboards.
Yeah.
So my best friend is Google, and I'm like, hey, Google, how do you build one? And so I started watching the YouTube videos, and I'm like, shoot, I could do this. Like, I could do this myself. And I did that. And
Wow.
after that, I was like, oh, I'm a builder. Like, I'm a carpenter's daughter for real. So my husband bought me a saw. I mean, and I've always loved tools and stuff because anything that needs to be hung up in our house, I do. And
Wow.
I've done that since I was younger. I just, I don't measure. I kind of just look and be like, okay, it goes right there. So I don't have a method. And then when COVID hit, as we were going through the COVID season, and we're just in the house, and I'm looking around, I'm like, shoot, we got a lot of stuff to do in this house. So currently, I'm in the kitchen right now. I've painted the top cabinets. So next week, I'm starting the bottom cabinets, and I just realized during that time, what I love about doing projects in the house is I love it when it's quiet and just me and whatever I'm doing. It is when I hear God the loudest. It is my time to de-stress. I mean, that's really what it is for me. And
Mhm.
I hear him clearly. And that's probably one of the reasons that I love doing it. And I truly believe because I'm tuned into him that my projects come out good. Because he is clearly helping me. Because most of the time I'm winging it. Like I have no idea. Sometimes I have a plan, sometimes I don't. And I'm
Wow.
just like, oh, that fits together. Here we go. Let's do this. So,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
I
I
got
think
a little
that's so
creative
cool.
spirit within me. I love
Yeah.
creativity. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I've loved watching. I was like, I am anti buying a drill. I got more tools than I want to have already, and I'm not buying a drill. But I'm like, she out here really building stuff.
need a drill. Come on. I mean,
Mm-mm.
it's so much easier to put a to put a screw in.
Nope, 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 nope. That's one of my friends was like, you feel so empowered if you no, I want a drill with strong arms on the other end of it. So if it's not coming here with the strong arms, I don't want it.
But I would not consider myself having strong arms, but you know what? The drill, you don't need strong arms. It does it for you.
Well, see, I want a drill plus the
Oh,
person who's going to be using the drill to be
got
big and strong. And if you
got
get,
it.
I'm anti-single woman with drill.
Got it. Got it.
So I'm going to bring up your contact information. And if you would, as you tell us how the various ways are that if people want to follow you, if they want to get your product, where can they find you?
Absolutely. So I have a website, is ladycharlet.com. You can purchase all of the books, and I believe one of the t-shirts that I had to change, the Beautiful Loved and Bold t-shirt on there as well. All of the books are there. They're also on Amazon as well, so you can get the books from Amazon as well. And
Mm-hmm.
you can follow me on social media on Facebook and IG is at Lady Charlet. You can find me there, and I have to change as well. I don't know. I got like 100,000 groups on there. Who knows? Like I'm like I need to close some of these. But yeah, I have my personal page that I had to change page.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have a Bible study page, so you'll see it all on my page probably
Okay.
as well. I do have a YouTube channel. I haven't done a lot on it. I'm learning how to do that. I'm one of these old people it takes me a little longer. I still haven't figured out Twitter yet. So I'm on Twitter at Lady Charlotte, but you probably won't see anything on it. So
Gotcha. So Facebook and IG are the
yeah,
places where
pretty
you
much.
show
I
up
know how
most.
to navigate them, and it's pretty sad. I'm finally that person that my 10-year-old is teaching me how to do IG. So I've officially become a mother. When I was younger, she used to say, "Hey, can you set my VCR for me?" So now,
Wow.
like, Ma, you don't know how to use your VCR? So now I'm the one that goes, I don't know how to use IG.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Tables have turned, right?
Yes, yes, they have. It's like now I have to go to them for advice on how to do stuff. It's like, jeez.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, Mom, just show me how to do this, you know? So before traditionally we always say, and I always like to ask my guests to share last words of inspiration. I'm going to share my last announcement as you prepare or think about whatever it is you want to say by way of inspiration, motivation, encouragement. um, some of you guys know, and some of you guys that may be watching are part of it, as an offshoot of starting these interviews last year. And I held some segments towards the end of last year that I called Beyond the Interview, where I invited some of my guests into a closed space with those that wanted to come into those space to have deeper conversations, and allow those of you that decided to join to interact with the guests and ask questions. So I have taken that and actually have a private community now on Facebook called Our Common Thread. So the information at the bottom of the screen is how you can connect with me in that space if you so desire. I have events that are exclusive to that space, again, because I want you guys that are listening to have a safer space to want to ask some questions or interact. So we actually have an event coming up this Saturday. So I'm putting that up. My friend and brother Leon Timbo is joining me in that space to talk relationship and religion, and it's this Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And the benefit about being in the group, even if you are not available while the event is streaming live, because we would use the same platform that we're using now to stream live into that group, the video remains in the group for you to rewatch. So if you don't get to watch while we are live doing the event at 2 p.m. on Saturday, if you are part of the group, you can always catch the replay. So I wanted to share that announcement and share the information at the bottom of the screen about how you can connect with me in that space. So, Lady Charlotte, as we prepare to hear whatever it is you have to share with us by way of encouragement, I want to thank you again so much for saying yes to joining me in this space. I knew it was going to be good, and it has been all of that and then some. I've been encouraged and inspired. So, what is it that you would want to share with us with your final thoughts of motivation, encouragement, or inspiration, or whatever words you want to leave?
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to come on your platform. You're doing an amazing job, by the way. You're an
Thank
amazing
you.
interviewer. I love it. I love it. Um, y- I guess the last words, what I would say to especially the women that are watching is continue to work on yourself.
Mhm.
Taking care of yourself is not selfish. I grew up in that thought that if I do stuff for myself, it's a selfish thing. You know, as women, sometimes we're supposed to take care of everybody else, and we forget to take care of ourselves. And even though we know that, we've heard that over the many years, we hear it in sermons. The reality is, we cannot be helpful to anyone else if we are not healthy, if
Mhm.
we are not taking care of ourselves. You heard it a million times. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You just can't. It's
Right.
impossible. And in order for us to be an influence on our daughters, even our sons, nieces, nephews, people in the church, you know, we're trying to lead while we're bleeding. We can't do that because we end up hurting people. I truly believe that church hurt happens because we have people that are not healthy yet trying to help people that are unhealthy. It's
Right.
impossible.
Right.
So I would encourage you, if you need therapy, it's okay. Go to therapy. It
Mm.
doesn't mean you're crazy. It means that you are healthy.
Right. Right. That you are aware and you know that you need.
Absolutely. It's absolutely
Yeah.
deal with your issues. Be honest with yourself. Um, Especially Peter Cicero says it best. He said, "It is impossible to be spiritually mature while remaining emotionally immature." So all of us are trying to be spiritually mature. I don't care how many scriptures you know about heart. If you're not talking to your neighbor, If you're not talking to your sister, if you're not talking to the woman that, or somebody says her name and you're like, her, you're not spiritually mature either.
Wow.
Right?
Wow. Yeah.
So uh, I'm a big advocate on getting yourself healthy. I call it doing the work.
Mm.
And it is a continuous process.
Mhm.
It is not easy. However, I believe that you can do it. I'm
Yes.
doing it. You're
Yes.
doing it, right? And
Yes.
I've seen so many women do it. And I believe that that is how we change the narrative of, I don't do women. I don't like women. I don't, I'm going to do it by myself. All I need is myself. That's not how God created us. He created us for relationship. And this is what we're supposed to be doing. So I would encourage you, continue to do the work. Continue to be open, vulnerable. Do not be afraid of your past. And your past does not dictate your future.
Yes.
Not at
Yes.
all. I
Yes.
don't care what you did last night. If you repented today, guess what?
You got a new
God
start.
can use you right here, right now, at this moment.
Absolutely.
And I'll leave you with this, what I tell my ladies all the time. What is in your mouth? What you have experienced in your life? The woman next to you needs to hear it, because she may be set free from your testimony. As simple as that. We don't go through stuff in vain.
We
It is
about
for somebody else.
we about to be the same person. As I was reading your book, I'm like, don't. I mean, there are parts of your story I can't identify with, but there are many parts of your story. I was like, this sounds just like me. And what you just said is the drive behind why I do what I do. I believe that our freedom is oftentimes in our sister's mouth. And it's like, if you are delivered from it, if you are healed, please help your sister that you see in bondage. And oftentimes you may not even see it, but her hearing where she is come out of your mouth is an indicator to her that she too can be free.
Absolutely.
So
Because
yeah.
the enemy's plan is to get you to shut up. The enemy's plan is to make you think you're the only one. And the enemy will tell you, if you say it out loud, they won't love you. They don't want to be around you. They don't, whatever.
All of that. All of that.
And God is like, say it out loud.
Yes.
Set yourself free, because we are free indeed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I could tell as I was reading your book, I was like, yeah. But to hear you say it the exact way, yeah.
Look,
We
at this
for real.
sometimes I say too much, and I'm like, I realize, I'm 47 years old. I love tattoos. I got a whole sleeve. I'm about to do my other arm right now. I don't care. I was in bondage for so many years. I was the woman like, I can't believe they're getting all these tattoos, knowing I really wanted one on the inside. But because I was in a church where it believed that you can't do that and don't mark up your body. And I'm like, wait a minute, are we not under grace? Whatever, be free. Be free. And that's who I am now. Maybe it's just the fact that I'm getting older. I don't know. I'm just
does add to
God
it.
has called me to be. I may not get invited to somebody's church, but that's okay, because I wasn't supposed to be there anyway.
Absolutely. They're lost because you have a profound testimony.
That's all him.
Thank you so much for your transparency, and thank you guys again for watching. Thank you for your comments. I typically, if I miss them during the session, I will go back and read them. Sometimes I'll respond to them, and I think the guests do the same. So thank you. Please remember to subscribe if you are on YouTube. Even if you're not, go to YouTube, type Simply Tammy, and click subscribe for me, please. If you're on Facebook, like and follow. If you want to be in the group, it is a subscription group, but it's worth the subscription. Just go check out the page and see what it's about. simplytammy.com/connect. And Lady Charlet, thank you again for joining me on this platform. I'm going to ask that you just hang out with me for a few moments as we conclude. And we will be back next week. Another guest, same date, same time, sharing truths that inspire, as you heard in the beginning. So thank you guys again for watching, and hopefully you'll connect with me, and I'll see you back next week.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you. And Light of Life Church ladies, go ahead and subscribe.
Yes, thank you. Y'all, you heard what your first lady said. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.